Didn't say a bad thing about the guy.
It just feels wrong to, like Ethan said, to glamorize something like that because that's just a dangerous idea.
That's my point. And I feel like that's a that's at least, even if you disagree, a good place to have to get indignant over and to call me a Zionist. Mm-hmm. If you call me a Zionist, you're an anti-Semite. You know why? Because I'm not a fucking Zionist, and I've made that exactly profoundly, deeply clear. So when you see someone on Twitter, when you see someone in the audience calling me a Zionist, what they're calling me is a fucking Jew. Mm-hmm. Because that's the only goddamn thing that means at that point.
As people on the left, I guess we like to believe there are causes we believe in so strongly we would actually die for. I know there's definitely things I feel like I believe in so strongly I would die for. But would we actually? And it's a question like a lot of us might be thinking about recently with the sacrifice of Aaron Bushnell. And I don't know about you guys, but I can relate to him in many ways. Like, I wouldn't do what he did. And I'll keep it real, for multiple reasons, I wouldn't do that. But I can relate to the frustration. I can relate to the disgust. I can relate to just the feeling of, I have to do something. And, you know, I've been to the protests. I've made loads of YouTube videos. I've been making videos on Israel for, years and years at this point. And it seems like it just gets worse. Nothing gets done. And with that frustration, like, what can I do as an individual? And in that sense, I totally respect what he did. Because he used his position as someone in the biggest imperialist military in the entire world, which props up a system that oppresses most of us. They're the key architect of the capitalist system, which also means groups like the Palestinian become sacrificial lambs for capitalism. All the Arab states don't care because they're friends of Israel. Why? Because it benefits them to be pro-Western, pro-American, and by default, you've got to be pro-Israeli. Why do you think groups like the Saudis are even doing that recently? And in that, this whole prison we've created for ourselves, we just have to watch in 4K as a group of people get utterly decimated, destroyed, and have a genocide done against them by a nation state which resembles many colonial nation states, very similar to the United States, very similar to Canada, very similar to New Zealand and Australia, similar as well to my family's home country of Ireland, countries where an occupying foreign power comes over, commits genocide, cultural genocide, seeks to erase your entire identity to make you either like them or wipe you off the face of the earth to make room for their settlements. And it's probably not surprising that although a lot of people throw the argument about Jewish people being all native to the region, a lot of the original Zionists actually thought of themselves like American settlers. Because what we're seeing right now is basically what you saw in the 17, 18 and 1900s in the United States with the American government's own genocide of American natives to make way for the United States. And of course, who played a big role in that? Settlers. And what did they do with the remaining natives? Stuck them in reservations where their quality of life to this day is still worse than your average American, right? So we're watching all of that in real time, and Aaron Bushnell decided, I'm going to do something. I'm going to bring attention to this. I'm going to try and do something above what I've been doing already. And from what he's expressed and everything like that, he's mentally sound. And I totally get it as well. And I totally understand it as well. As someone who has such frustration with what I'm watching right now, I understand it. And I think a lot of us do because we're being gaslit into thinking what we're seeing is normal. Xenophobic media, racist media, the woke washing of the Israeli government, of their actions, to be carried by the news media of the West to make you feel like, Palestinians deserve this. They deserve this, and Arabs always deserve this, basically, because they are uncivilized barbarians. This goes back to like the 1800s. And if you want a good Palestinian work on this, read Edward Said, because he outlines it perfectly, how we're so brainwashed in the West to see these people as savages who basically deserve all the bad things happening to them. Now, on that note, Ethan Klein keeps getting in hot water because he keeps saying stuff that his audience don't like. And in my opinion, his latest comments about Bushnell are pretty gross in terms of he is saying he's just an edgy comedian who makes jokes, but I think it's just so revealing about his mindset. Now, I think what Ethan Klein represents is a lot of liberal sentiment towards the whole conflict in that it's Hamas versus the Israeli government. These two parties are to blame for the destruction. Hamas for attacking, the Israeli government for going too far. And as someone who talks about nuanced conversations a lot, Ethan Klein doesn't have nuance on this issue because it's not the Israeli government alone. Every single Israeli government has done this. Every single Israeli political party supports this. Most Israeli Jews support what's going on. I've showed polls from January where 95% say that they support what's going on or they want more of it. 40%, over 40% want more of it. Like, it's a deeply unwell society. Deeply unwell, gripped by fascism, and it's continuously gotten worse and worse since its establishment, where it's at its probably most right-wing fascist peak, where you have basically a whole group of the population just frothing at the mouth for genocide, and even though it's been going on for months, they still like it. So I'll get more into my thoughts on Ethan Klein's comments in a sec, including him saying that anyone who calls him a Zionist is just wanting to call him a Jew, which, if I'm going to be super charitable, he fundamentally doesn't understand like what Zionism really means. He seems to conflate it with supporting everything the Israeli government does right now, which it definitely doesn't mean that. So just before we go any further, this happened a couple days ago, but I was waiting until I made a more like Israel-specific video to shout this out. But basically, you know, my girlfriend, she wrote an interview with a crew in Gaza who ran a dance school for children. And it was one of the few places that they could find a welcome break from just, you know, actually living through a genocide. I'm sad to report the school was actually bombed by Israel and 2 of the children died as well. So an update from their GoFundMe, which I'm going to link. Please go check this out. They need the resources still. They posted on the 28th. Tragic news, support needed. We are writing with a heavy heart to inform you that yesterday our dance school was bombed. The Camp Breakers dance school. Many children were killed and injured, including several of our family members. We are in despair. Rania and Tota, aged 9 and 5, were both killed along with their parents. They were happy students with big dreams. We are asking if anyone may be able to help with additional contributions to help repairing the damage or to share with your networks. We are increasing the fundraising target by $65 to $100,000. This will allow us to rebuild our studio and continue to support our students through activities and future workshops. Please help by donating or sharing with your networks. Every action helps. Thank you. That is just in the description, so please go and check that out. But basically, I'm not going to play this video because it's on his private stream. Apparently, he threatened to copyright strike people who used it. Doesn't really matter because it's going around social media anyway. And someone thankfully wrote a transcript of it, so I can just read from it. And if you want to go find it, you know, just go look for it, like you probably find it. And the Reddit user Thunderegg Transcribe did this. Ethan saying, I saw the video and my first reaction is that don't say rest in power, that's not for him. I see the leftist dialogue about this has been bananas. I think he was replying to a comment. My first reaction is this. It's absolutely insane how he stood the whole time. It was crazy. I don't even know how that's humanly possible. Again, not to put this uncouth, but he's a champ at burning alive. I mean, that sounds bad, but he did really good. Does that sound bad? We have to make levity of things. Does it sound bad that he was really good? I mean it as a compliment. What the fuck are you guys angry at me, you weirdos? What did I do? Stop. My point is this. First of all, I was stunned by the way he stood through the whole thing. I mean, that was wild. Really showed his true resolve to protest in that way. I can only imagine that's just a horrific way to die, so pretty wild. That being said, I do not believe that it is good for people to be romanticizing or encouraging. I know it's not. I know people aren't doing that. But the way people are romanticizing it is kind of fucked up, in my opinion. He killed himself, and I don't think we should ever talk about that issue with any kind of reverence. Because let's be real, the amount of people online who are talking about it in this wonderful, almost, I don't know how to describe it, people are trying to word it, people are idolizing him. You're going to. More people are going to kill themselves. I mean, that's just a matter of fact. It's just there are more people going to kill themselves. I can appreciate his dedication, to put it mildly, you know, I can appreciate it, and his conviction. Self-immolation is literally suicide. He killed himself. Reading the chat, you should 100% do more research on self-immolation as protest. Yeah, you know who does it? People who are under tyrannical rule, who have literally no way for their voices to be heard other than that. Like, I'm sorry, suicide bad. I don't think we should romanticize it. Everyone is glamorizing it. How can you even disagree with me on that? It's crazy. Monks do a self-immolation. Yeah, I know, when they're like under tyrannical oppression by the Chinese, but literally have no way for their voices to be heard. But I mean, the Palestinian cause is for sure plenty talked about. It's pretty wild for me that he doesn't understand a protest against America and Israel, but he'd understand it if it was a monk against China. And I wrote this in a comment on the actual podcast. Don't know if I ever read this, but they might, because they might get the notification because I have, you know, over 100,000 subscribers. I said, fundamentally, everything he said there shows no respect for the cause he died for. It's just, I respect his conviction to burn alive, we shouldn't glamorize that. And he did it well because, I don't know, he stood for long. I know he's like an edgy comedian, but it's just a gross joke. And I get sometimes as a comedian you're pushing the boundaries. He made a joke later on when the mic was messing up saying it's the ghost of Aaron Bushnell haunting us. In my opinion, it's so tasteless, especially because of some of the stuff he said in the past. And it just really like minimizes everything this guy did. Because if you do respect his principles and his conviction, I don't think you'd be making this joke. And he does address this. I'm going to get into him addressing these comments. And the fundamental point of everything he said there is he can't empathize at all with what Aaron did because he doesn't care. And I said this in my comment to him as well on YouTube. I don't think he cares about Palestine at all. I think because his audience lean left, he's paid lip service. And as we're going to see, he's saying, I'm saying all the things. I'm saying it's genocide. I'm saying it's apartheid. But you calling me a Zionist, that's too far. You're basically just calling me a Jew. And again, fundamentally, I think it shows he just wants to be left alone. Don't criticize me for believing Israel should exist. He's just getting really mad. He's getting so much criticism for his takes that he thinks are like very, very rational. And one more thing I want to note is like, a lot of people like Ethan, not that he said it in the quotes I read, they're saying it's all because of mental health problems. Like this guy wasn't well because you can't be mentally sound and do this. I mean, apparently if you're a monk, you can, but if you're just an average guy in the military, you can't. And I would say you can. Plenty of things done in history which seem extraordinary or taken too far or extreme to us, they were done by people with totally sound minds. And loads of people in revolutionary movements or in war have sacrificed themselves for a greater cause. And Ethan did go on to say that if he was Palestinian and he did it near like the wall around Gaza, he'd understand it more. So he understands it on some level, but I guess you have to be like a direct victim of the colonialism to do it with a sound mind, because if you're like someone like Aaron, who was part of the war machine, you doing it means you have like mental health issues, which I completely reject. It sounds like a guy, from what he said, he was fine. And he's a guy who's just so distraught at the world, like myself, who, you know, sacrificed himself in the hope that it would change something. In my opinion, I'm not romanticizing it, I just respect it. And I don't blame him for this. I blame the US government, and I blame the Israeli government, and I blame every single piece of Western media and Israeli media and all this garbage, which has created an environment for genocide that all of us have to fucking watch, and nothing changes what our government do. So people have to resort to extreme measures to even put a bit of pressure on these governments. So let's listen to Ethan address it. I'm going to play you like a fair bit, maybe 4 minutes or something. It is from like a, you know, hours long podcast. If I start talking about something he didn't say, I'll link the video. You guys can go watch it because he did say it. I'm going to watch it right now for about like 8 or 10 minutes, and then I'm going to react to it.
I guess some people are mad that I said suicide bad. Another hot take from Ethan Klein, the Zionist genocide supporter. They're mad about my comments about Aaron Bushnell on the See You Next Tuesday. My point was this. I think you should be careful about how you romanticize suicide, because it's going to encourage more people to do it. That was my take. And that apparently enraged people. Unless I'm misunderstanding, tell me why. I'd love to know why. It's really annoying that like people just, they stand by like just waiting for any reason to call me, and by the way, call me a Zionist, make it about how I support genocide, about all this horrible fucking shit, to call me racist. Why? Because I made one stupid, insensitive joke that, by the way, they didn't call his character into question. It literally was just like, he was really good. And my point was that, like, his resolve was crazy. And the thing that, you know, really struck me about that video was how he stood there.
That was my first reaction.
And I was like, wow, I didn't even think that anybody could do that. So, I mean, I don't know how to talk about that, but his resolve was incredible. And what I said was, he's really good at burning alive. And I mean that as the most sincere compliment possible. He really is.
And it's obviously also a really dark, like, humoristic way to look
at it. So how are you going to take that and call me a racist, a genocidal, a monster? I mean, if you're coming at me with those kinds of takes, you are ensuring peace will never happen. Because you can't even have you can't even have any kind of dialogue where everybody isn't walking totally aligned with you. I never said a single bad thing about that man, other than the compliment, not even the compliment, because it's weird to say, but his resolve is nuts. His resolve was really remarkable. That's what I said. And that's what the joke was. If you can't deal with it, then, you know, you're a fucking hypocrite, because I make these jokes about all different topics, about all different sensitive things, about all different groups of people, every fucking show. And then when it lightly brushes on your shoulder, you freak the fuck out and you bitch and you cry and you go and you try to find any reason to you know what I mean, to get angry. Give me a fucking break. Look in the mirror, loser. You're the problem. You are the problem.
Him like playing some sort of victim. You made the joke, dude. I know you did it and thought you were in like some private safe space where you could really say what you think, but you made the joke. So take the heat. You made a gross joke about someone who died for their convictions, a principled man who died for his convictions. Don't care if you agree with it or not. If you actually respected what he did, like you said you did, you wouldn't have made these gross jokes. It's clear it had no effect on you, what he did. Besides, you're like, oh, damn, dude, that guy burnt himself to death. Fucking hell, that's crazy. Is that a normal reaction? Is that an empathetic reaction to someone who felt like they had to do that? Even if you disagree with it, if someone feels like they have to do that, where's your empathy? Again, don't cry about people coming at you for this specifically when you made the gross joke about something super sensitive, someone who people around the world now respect and honour for making this ultimate sacrifice. But then let's get on to the Zionist thing. And he's saying that people have a problem with him, calling him a Zionist. They're basically just wanting to call him a Jew. And now it's open season for the left and the right to be anti-Semitic.
To explain your reason for calling me a racist, calling me a genocidal, a Zionist, which, by the way, Zionist is just another slur for Jew, being a Jew. You know how many people now calling fucking every Jew's a Zionist? It's like, okay, just call me a Jew and get it fucking over with. Call me the K word, at least I'll know what you mean. It's just the truth. Not everybody, not all the time. But a lot of times, let's not fucking pretend that anti-Semitism isn't a fucking massive inferno of acceptable behavior right now on the left and the right. Nazis and leftists are dabbing the fuck up, saying fuck Zionists, you know? And, you know, again, it's driving me insane. I gotta fucking talk about it. You know, I'm not gonna sit here and pretend like there's just not a tidal wave of anti-Semitism gobbling up the entire discourse. It's fucking disgusting, man. And I'm doing, as an Israeli dual citizen, as someone who's deeply invested in the state of Israel, who's probably more sympathetic to the Israeli perspective than most people would be, I've tried so hard to pull myself to some kind of central ground where we can have a real conversation about this stuff. I'm pulled myself all the way to, you know, outright saying that it's apartheid, that it's genocide, that the Israeli government is committing. And so, but you still want to call me a racist and a genocide and a Zionist. Why would you call me a Zionist if it wasn't just, oh, you're a fucking Jew? When I have said all the things that you want to hear from me. You know, I'm not going to sit here and let my fucking people, you know, be openly bigoted and racist. Fuck that shit. Nobody would expect that from any other minority. Nobody. And I'm here. I'm with you. I'm on your side all the fucking way. I'm on your side as much as I possibly can be. And instead of, you know, holding hands and having a real conversation, you spit in my fucking face and you call me a Zionist to get indignant over and to call me a Zionist. Mm-hmm. If you call me a Zionist, you're anti-Semite. You know why? Because I'm not a fucking Zionist, and I've made that exactly, profoundly, deeply clear. So when you see someone on Twitter, when you see someone in the audience calling me a Zionist, what they're calling me is a fucking Jew. Because that's the only goddamn thing that means at that point.
Now, I've made a whole video calling out right-wing grifters who are using Palestine to actually push anti-Semitism. My whole channel, I would say, maybe like a third of my content is dedicated to anti-fascist stuff, which usually centers around focusing my research and efforts on exposing like terrible anti-Semitism, which nearly always comes from the right wing. People like, you know, Jordan Peterson. For ages, I've been talking about how he's motivated by anti-Semitism. Elon Musk. All these massive figures. That's the face of anti-Semitism. And also, what unites all of them? They're pro-Israel. Because most anti-Semites these days who pose a danger to Jewish people are actually pro-Israel. I know that might blow your mind because also, Ethan, there's a group called Christian Zionists and they're very powerful in America. They actually made up most of Trump's administration and Bush's, they actually love Israel. Do you know why they love Israel? Because it's the key to Armageddon, where all the Jews will die unless they convert to Christianity, right? So when people say Ethan Klein is a Zionist, sure, will there be people who hate him because he's Jewish and they're trying to use it as something to hide? Sure, there are people like that. I would say probably most of them are conservative. But yeah, maybe there's some leftists who don't like Jewish people either. But fundamentally, you being a Zionist is not about you supporting the government right now. Originally, Zionism, the dominant form of Zionism that created the State of Israel, was left-wing Zionism, socialist Zionism. It's a reason that why so many socialist groups used to support Israel. The whole of the communist bloc supported Israel. Ho Chi Minh was friends with Ben Gurion. Stalin sent weapons through Czechoslovakia to the Israelis for the creation of their state, right? Irish Republican socialists used to support Israel over the Arabs because there was a massive deal of racism tied up in that, but also socialist anti-imperialism. They viewed it as well as the Jews reclaiming their homeland against the evil British Empire and also Palestinians, right? And the people involved in the peace process in the 90s were left-wing Zionists. Being a Zionist is not us saying to you, oh my God, you support Netanyahu in genocide. But if I say to you, Israel has no right to exist as a settler colonial apartheid state, the same way Northern Ireland, Australia, New Zealand, America, Canada, they have no right to exist. Would you agree with that sentiment? Would you agree with the sentiment that you can't just group together, go to someone else's country, create like an apartheid regime that you rule, and now say it belongs to you? That's not okay, is it? It wasn't okay when the American settlers and government did it. It's not okay when the British Empire did it. It's just not okay, right? It's not okay in Vietnam with the French. So if you agree with that, then surely you must agree with Israel that that's not okay and it shouldn't exist and it should be one secular state for everyone. Even if you're going to tell me the reality is more complicated, which I would agree, because most of Israeli society is supporting the genocide right now. Of course, yeah, I realize that. But in theory, that's what we're talking about. So if you say, no, in theory, I reject that. Israel has a right to exist, built on stolen land, and built on land is constantly expanded upon for years and years. If people call you a Zionist for that, they're right. Zionism takes many shapes and different forms. You can be a right-wing religious Zionist. You can be an atheist, leftist, socialist Zionist. You can be a Christian, far-right, extremist Zionist. You can be all these different things. Someone saying that to you because you support the Israeli state to whatever extent doesn't mean they're just calling you a Jew and they're trying to be anti-Semitic. So Ethan, when you're making light of someone's ultimate sacrifice to end the genocide of the Palestinians and to end Israeli apartheid and colonialism, and then people call you a gross Zionist afterwards, they're not calling you a Jew necessarily, right? They're not calling you something anti-Semitic. They're saying, well, only someone with this mentality could think what he did was like stupid and not empathize with the cause. Because if you care about freedom and justice, like sincerely, and I know you say these things because it seems like it's transactional to you. You say, well, I've said the things. I've said the good things and you won't leave me alone. I've said it's apartheid and you're still giving me shit. How could you do that? I said it, but you don't believe it, do you? Do you seriously believe Israel is an apartheid state? Because by extension, you're going to have to believe it's some sort of colonial state that shouldn't exist, right? But I don't think you believe that. So you're just saying it because you know your audience want to hear it. And this is why people are going after you. You just don't have sincerity when it comes to this thing. We can all see what you truly believe about this. You are a liberal Zionist. You believe the genocide is bad. You believe Palestinians should have better human rights and dignity, which is a good thing. And if we were dealing with people like that in the situation right now, if you were the Prime Minister of Israel and the President of Israel, would that be an improvement? Yeah, of course. But I think what people are realizing now, the whole nation state of Israel is built upon this thing and only exists because of this thing. You kind of have to deconstruct that state if you ever want peace in the region, because it's bad for everyone. It's just going to cause conflict in perpetuity. I'd say to Ethan Klein, to be honest, I'm being more charitable when I should. I could just dunk on him like everyone else. But because he's shown okay instincts, I would say you have to just research this more. And to be honest, it's just going to take a ton of deconstruction of your mentality, your views, and your worldview. Because if you're seriously banging on about how you'd understand a monk burning themselves because of the Chinese government, but you don't understand why a US soldier would do it against his own government, then I can't really help you, to be honest. The US government's impact on the world is worse than the Chinese government's. Israel is worse than China. I don't even think that's controversial to say. Israel is worse than China. Not for everyone, of course, but in terms of just generally what they're doing, generally their impact around the world, generally their impact on the immediate surrounding countries, yeah, Israel is worse. So I've talked a lot about Ethan, but I want to talk a little bit about Aaron now as well. So Aaron's Will, he wrote this. I'm sorry to my brother and my friends for leaving you like this. Of course, if I was truly sorry, I wouldn't be doing this. But the machine demands blood. None of this is fair. I wish for my remains to be cremated. I do not wish for my ashes to be scattered or my remains to be buried, as my body does not belong anywhere in this world. If a time comes when Palestinians regain control of their land, and if people native to the land would be open to the possibility, I would love for my ashes to be scattered in a free Palestine. And then across the world, especially in Yemen, I saw today, people carrying pictures of him in protest. So it's clear what he's done has like resonated. He's become bigger than himself, and he's become a symbol to a lot of people that Westerners do care about them. It's really strange. I actually got a bit emotional reading his message. I don't know why. I think I just empathize with this guy a lot, and I just really respect like the sacrifice. And then just on that note a bit more, there's also just some testimony out there from some of his friends who talked about him as well.
I met Aaron Bushnell in basic training, and from the first day that I met him, I could tell that he was just a really sweet person. I could tell very quickly that he had a strong sense of justice. I want people to remember that his death is not in vain, that he died to spotlight this message. I don't want anybody else to die this way. If he had asked me about this, I would have begged him not to. I would have done anything I could to stop him. But obviously we can't get him back, and we have to honor the message that he left. He didn't have thoughts of suicide. He had thoughts of justice. That's what this was about. It wasn't about his life. It was about using his life to send a message.
You know, just a message from someone who knew him well. And, you know, like I said, I don't usually get emotional about stuff. And I'm actually surprised I am, because I'm not a very visibly emotional guy, but just reading what he said, listening to that, and like empathizing, I just find it so gross, like generally, what Ethan Klein, just the jokes he made. And it comes from a place of not caring, ultimately. And you can say the things, Ethan, even if you came around tomorrow and said Zionism is some sort of death cult, you know, secular Palestinian state for one country or something, right? I wouldn't believe you at all, because it's pretty clear I don't think you believe anything you're saying on this. It's just that, you know, you had a podcast with Hassan, you had an audience that are more left-wing, you know your own staff are against your views as well. I saw their Twitter likes about this. They're all pretty sympathetic. I know they're more left-wing than you. So you're kind of trapped where you're in this culture where most people who watch you don't agree with your politics on this issue. So what can you say? You can say the things, like you said. You say all the things. Say apartheid, say genocide. But it's clear in your joke, you just don't care. And whether that's because of your, you know, relative wealth, fame or whatever, you don't really have to think about these things on this level. You're too detached from the rest of us who do have to live a normal life, and we do feel victimized by our own country, and we do feel very strongly about this, and we do go out to protest, and we do go out to do the things because we want to put pressure on our government, and we're being gaslit and thinking we're crazy just because you agree with some of what we're saying, but then you make jokes which are gross, and you get a pushback from that, you know, doesn't mean you can play the victim and start saying, well, everyone who actually criticizes me for being a Zionist is actually someone who hates Jews, including left-wing people, including people who dedicate all their time to fighting actual anti-Semites, where the whole of the culture in every Western country gaslights us all into thinking like, you know, far-right figures are some sort of rational thinkers. Like, look at Douglas Murray, for example. And how many far-right people, actual fascists, hide behind support for Israel, and how many fascists love Israel? Because it does what they want to do. It brutalizes Muslims. So anyway, that is it for the video. I hope Ethan Klein gets, you know, his mind open to some better criticism. Not everyone who criticizes you, like, is anti-Semitic. I would actually say most pro-Palestinian people criticizing you definitely aren't. So please get out of this mindset that the term Zionist is some sort of, you know, word just for Jew when left-wing people use it to describe you, because if you support Israel's right to exist, that's what you are. You believe this apartheid colonial entity should exist on stolen land forever. But anyway, that is it for the video. Thank you for watching.